All right, hi everyone. Welcome back to Making Multifamily Money. So today I have a guest, Michelle Ngo. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. Hey, excited that we can connect. I know you presented at SARCon and you're on the 0 to 100 panel. So just wanted to really have a conversation and get to learn more about your real estate journey. So without further ado, please let us know.
Thank you. I'm honored to be on this podcast and to share my story. And I'm taking this time to be an open book. So whatever questions you have for me, let me know.
Yeah. So kind of start. What got you into real estate, and how'd you kind of scale?
Yeah. So my story is interesting, where I come from a real estate investing family. My family are immigrants from China, and they have, always valued real estate. So I grew up in the Chinatown area of San Francisco, and we bought multifamily properties there. And my family and all of our immediate family lived in one apartment complex. Each one of us had different apartments. And so I kind of grew up like in the multifamily space and saw how they operated. And they were very Asian in the approach of how they went about managing properties. So everything was budget. They went under the table with cash. They were using like friends and family to help manage their properties. There was a lot of things that were not run or operated like a normal business. And I saw them, I would go around with my dad, and we would go and clean apartments together or fix things. We would fix plumbing, fix clogged toilets. In San Francisco, there was already homeless, back like 30 years ago. So if a homeless broke into the basement and used the bathroom in our basement, then we would have to clean that up. So my view of real estate management was very negative. I didn't like it. I saw that they were constantly stressed out, complaining a lot about tenant drama and people not paying rent and all kinds of things. And I wanted to have nothing to do with it. So I actually made it a point when I, started going to school and developed my career, that I was like, I'm staying far away from business. I'm not business, from real estate. I'm just going to invest in stocks and not even touch anything real estate related, because I just saw like how it really kind of damaged my family. It was so stressful for them. So fast forward, it was around the time I was turning 21, just started going out a lot. And my boyfriend, now my husband, him and I at the time were going out in San Francisco. We would go out with our friends and come back to our San Francisco apartment and stay over before driving back the next morning, San Jose, so we could be safe after a night of going out. One night we came home, it was 2 a.m, and I find a foreclosure auction notice on our apartment. And then I'm like, what is going on? What is this? What does this mean? And it said like 3 weeks from now, you're going to auction, blah, 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 if you don't pay up. And that's when my whole world changed, because I realized like we were not well financially. So what was happening behind the scenes is my mom, she's kind of the businesswoman and the one to carry on the family legacy. She started to develop a severe mental illness when I was 5. She was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. And so I knew that things were not going well for her, but I had no idea the status of our business. And especially growing up in our Chinese family, it's something that we just don't talk about. We didn't talk about finances. They never share with me what was happening behind the scenes. And my father, who's an immigrant from Hong Kong, he never went to college, and he just tried his best to take care of everything because he felt like it was his duty. And what happened is that by him shouldering the whole burden and trying to protect me, he didn't share with anybody what was happening, that we were in deep financial trouble, that we had 3 foreclosures, that we had debt collectors, we had people suing us. There was a whole slew of things. So I started to get involved at that age, right around the time that I was getting my career started, and help them to turn everything around. It took many, many years. And we had about 20 years of back taxes that we had to clean up and submit, and it was so much work. Luckily, I was studying business at the time. I was trying to start my career in tech and accounting and finance, and so it worked out well that I did have at least somewhat of a business background to support them. And even then, going through that whole thing with my family, I was like, I hate real estate. This sucks. I want nothing to do with it. Like, people are suing us, and we almost lost our home, and all these, just still more things happening in my life that proved to me that real estate was not a good idea. So it wasn't until I started really living out my life, having a great career. I went into tech. I worked at really great companies that helped further my career, like Oracle and Workday and Hitachi, and just kind of really was like snowballing with my career there. And then my husband and I bought a house, and we were family planning, and we were talking about our wedding and all this other stuff. And then we got to this point where we were like, what is the purpose of all this? And we didn't know how to label it at the time, but it was the rat race that we realized we were going around in a circle, just checking off all the check boxes of like, what is the purpose? How come we did all the things that we were supposed to do, but we didn't feel like we were living a life of purpose or contributing or helping people? And so we started to kind of dig deep on like what would be a purposeful life. And this was as we were nearing 30 and kind of had like I call it a 30 life crisis. So we're just like, kind of nearing that age where it's like, what is the meaning of all this stuff that we're doing, and why are we doing it? And why are we even like working? Like, what is the meaning of money? we had so many like existential questions. So we got really deep over like many nights of like bottles of wine and just kind of like laid it all out. We were like, what would we want to do? And it ended up being, we want to have lifestyle freedom. We want to be able to travel. We want to be able to volunteer all day long and not worry about our paycheck and our mortgage and where like be reliant on somebody else to pay us so that we could live. And so we started to talk about like what that would look like, because for me it was mental health because of what happened to my mom, and just seeing how it really broke my family and broke everybody in our immediate family. We were all hugely affected by her illness, that I was like, I want to start a nonprofit. I want to volunteer all day and not worry about where I'm going to get my next paycheck, and have to like go do this job daily. So we started talking about passive income, and then we were like, how do you get passive income? And we were just kind of like Googling like passive income. What does that mean? How do you replace your paycheck? Like, just kind of really started that journey. And then we got into Bigger Pockets, started reading a bunch of books, watched a bunch of webinars, and started going to some seminars, and really got into the idea of like, oh, you can create passive income from real estate. It never even occurred to me, because I never, like, my worldview of real estate was so just one, focus, that it never occurred to me what could happen if you managed it differently, if you actually were organized and protected yourself and operated like a business, and you could have lifestyle freedom. Never occurred to me. And then it wasn't until I went to a health expo, and there's a real estate guy talking, and he's like, I bought a building for every bill. And that stuck with me. It was like a light bulb moment. I was like, a building for every bill. What does that even mean? And he was explaining how he's a police officer in Chicago and he like loves his job, but they don't pay him enough to support him and his family. He wanted to continue to being a police officer, but then he started thinking about how can he replace all of his expenses with passive income and cash flow. And he realized like getting a building for every bill that he had would create financial freedom for him. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into real estate, was just realizing like, wait a second, there's another way. And then as I started to deep dive into it more and more, then I started to recognize like, oh, all the things I have been doing for my family, all the cleanup of the foreclosures and working with attorneys and figuring out, mortgage stuff, and even my business background in accounting and finance and software has kind of led me up to the point where like I actually do have the skill sets required to be a real estate investor. So yeah, that's kind of how I started my real estate journey.
Wow, what a story. It's kind of funny how you went full circle. You went from, I guess most people, most like my family, we didn't start off in real estate, and that's the typical story. But it's kind of interesting to hear that your family was all real estate, but even despite that, you're so averted towards it. And it's funny, I always wonder about my future kids, like, are they just going to hate real estate too and then want to do nothing with it? But it's funny how you ended up going back to it once you discovered that, there's potential for passive income, there's potential for lifestyle freedom. And like you said, you could buy a building for every bill that you own. So it's kind of funny how you start off hating it, not knowing what it really was. You just kind of were exposed, then having to take over and manage it, hating it, to be honest, and then rediscovering that, oh, wait, real estate is actually pretty good, but you have to run it the right way as a business. So a lot of things I kind of want to dive in here. So I guess kind of going back to kind of your childhood, like, do you know why your parents got into real estate in the first place? Like, did they ever kind of share that with you?
I think it's just something that we understand kind of in our culture, especially with Chinese people. And I'm hearing from a lot of other Chinese people, especially like, growing up in the Chinatown area, like that is how you create wealth, is you buy property. And you see it a lot, a lot of real estate is owned by Chinese people, either Chinese Americans or people from China. So I think that is just sort of the unsaid like cultural understanding of like how to build wealth is through real estate. But I think what they didn't do that we have now is like, we have resources on the internet, and we have coaching and we have books. They didn't have any of that. So they tried their best to run these properties with no business background or no understanding of how to be an entrepreneur, how to manage people, how to manage the properties efficiently. So yeah, I think that's why they got into it in the first place. But I mean, just like I remember they were like doing rent rolls, and it was all like on a notepad. They were doing everything on pieces of paper. I remember like they were like collecting checks and like, writing down like each amount and who submitted the check and what day. And I think back to that and I'm like, can you imagine if you had like 100 units and you had to sit there and write down every single rent check that you got in a month? Like, I could not imagine. And can you imagine like how error prone that system would be?
Yep, that's how you can cheat on the taxes a little bit, right?
Yeah, right. Like,
all cash and go to the bank.
Zero.
Hide the cash under the mattress.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. No, so it's kind of funny you shared that because, we're so fortunate in this day and age where there's a lot of information out there where you can have zero exposure to real estate and just pop online on YouTube and search it or Google it. Yeah. But yes, back in, our parents' time, Like it was just kind of who your friends were, who your community was. And to your parents, in a good or bad way, depending how you take it, they're surrounded by people who just made it seem normal to own real estate, right? Like everyone, that was just the thing to do. You own real estate. I'm assuming a lot of people own some type of business, whether it's a store, a restaurant, and then whatever money they make from that, they pump into real estate. So they at least were around that type of people where it was just more normalized, right? Like for me, I didn't think of buying apartment complexes was normal until I joined a group and everyone was buying apartments. Then I just felt out of place that I wasn't buying apartments. But before that, I was like, oh, only the rich people buy apartments. It's not for someone like me.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting how, despite the lack of resources, just surrounding themselves with the right people, obviously they're probably popping the way they're running the business because that's how everyone ran it. And the funny thing is what you described earlier was you were house hacking essentially your apartment complex. You basically own an apartment, your family owned an apartment complex, and you would live in a couple of units and then rent out the other units, which was what we call house hacking today, right?
Yeah.
So that's crazy how you did that. But kind of one thing I wanted to dive into is, as you mentioned, everything, they didn't run it like a business. They just kind of like, I assume a lot of it was their day job. Yeah, a lot of friends, a lot of family that were just kind of helping you out, and maybe you pay them to fix things here and there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how'd you kind of change that once you kind of took over? Like, was there something you did immediately, or were you just kind of continuing the process?
So for their properties, I was very intentional at not doing it on their behalf. So I actually found a fund manager eventually to manage their properties for them, which was a blessing because it would have, I still wanted to further in my tech career. So that I was like, okay, I still want to, keep going with this career. I don't have time to manage these properties. Let me just find a manager to help us out. So that was a blessing because I kind of got to see how they managed properties and how efficient they were, read the reports, and kind of saw like what it would take if you did have a structured way of managing properties and P&Ls and all those details, the tax return. So for me personally, in my approach, I went about it with doing a lot of coaching, investing a lot in myself, to learn from people that have done it correctly and have systems. And my very first coaching investment, it was like the biggest investment I've ever made in myself. It was 50 grand for coaching. And I was like, I saw that the value because they were giving me all their systems, even down to like their marketing materials, creating videos for us, all the things helped us, set up our LLC. It was so valuable to do that. But at the same time, people around us were like, you're crazy. Why would you spend that kind of money? How do you even know it's going to work? Right. So it takes a lot of faith too, in investing that much money in yourself and just that this will pay off. There were times where I questioned, like, is this really working? Do I know what I'm doing? Is this going to pay off in the end? And I also see, in that program, there were people that had a good amount of money. Let's say, they were older. They were maybe like a dentist or a lawyer, and they spent the 50 grand. It wasn't a lot of money to them. And they just expected to learn how to invest in real estate by not putting in a lot of effort. And then in the end, like they had no properties, like they had no deals because they didn't take it seriously. Whereas for me, it was so much money that I squeezed every drop I could out of the coaching. I was like, I need to like rewatch our coaching calls. I need to do all of the course material. I need to put in all the work. I was really putting in that effort because it felt like so much money and I had to make it back. Like there was no option for me to not make it back. And because of that, I think like I scaled so fast and I actually made that 50K back in like 6 months. So it was great. Like I was like, wow, I flipped, a couple houses. It was a flipping coaching program, and flipped a couple houses. The first one lost money on, the next two made money on, and then made the 50 back within the 6 month period of our coaching. And so I'm like, so if you if you told somebody like, oh, if you invest 50K, but you'll make it back in 6 months and you have all the knowledge to continue on exponentially, wouldn't that be a great deal? So since then, I've been like a huge proponent of coaching, investing in myself. I'm also a coach myself for Zen Coast University. We help students with passive income. And so, just like from my personal experience of doing it, that's given me the confidence to really share with other people like, hey, like it's worthwhile if you invest in yourself.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that story because, I'm pretty big on, coaching, mentoring as well. I joined a mentorship program, specializing in apartment complex. It wasn't 50,000, it was only 15K, but it's still a pretty penny, right? And
Yeah.
what I kind of tell people is, honestly, what's beautiful about real estate is you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's been around for centuries. It will continue to be around for centuries. And for the most part, the concepts are very easy, right? You want to buy right, add value, and then know your exit strategy, whether you're flipping it, doing a cash out refinance, or just holding it, right? So,
Right.
and then for that, as you mentioned, but the people and all the information now, it's honestly free. I would say the only difference between coaching and mentorship is it's just a little more structured. You have someone there that's kind of like a step ahead of you and kind of guide you through those pitfalls. My mentorship that I joined, like I kind of wish they were more involved in that aspect. Like I kind of just learned a lot on my own. And then I just started sharing my own journey, my own mistakes on like YouTube, because I just felt like no one was really doing that. And kind of another piece I wanted to hit on was, like when you invest money into something, you take it way more seriously. Like the fact that you put 50K into it, it was probably like at the time, all your savings. And for you, it was, I need to learn how to do this. And because of that, you became probably coachable. You consumed the material fast. You took consistent action. And I was the same way. Like, I was just like, okay, if you tell me to write 5 offers a week, I'm going to write 5 offers a week at least.
Yeah.
If you tell me to send mailers out, I'll send mailers out. And like on my first deal, I made 250K equity day one, buying an apartment complex off market. So, I mean, I spent 15K, I made 250K off my first apartment complex, right? So
amazing.
So I really like how you do that, but I kind of want to preface that if you don't have the money, everyone is fortunate to be able to spend that money, but free information is good out there. You just have to, make sure that you follow people who are actually doing it and are willing to teach. So there's ways to get it for free, but from my experience, you take it a lot more seriously when you have skin in the game, which unfortunately means that you're going to have to put some money down. Because if you give someone the same information for free versus if you paid like 50K for that information, your level of commitment is going to vary significantly. Because when it's free, you take it for granted, unfortunately. So,
sure.
Great. Thanks. Yeah, great for sharing that. And I kind of glazed over it a bit, but so let's go back to that foreclosure on your apartment complex.
Yeah.
So how did you handle that situation and how did it end up?
So my dad went to the court and found out that if he declared bankruptcy, they would pause the foreclosure. And so he went in to the auction and waved his papers and was like, we're declaring bankruptcy. And then they had to pause the foreclosure. And it's interesting. I don't even know how he came up on that news. I think he was talking to an attorney about it. And that was a great thing because I had no idea how we were going to save it. It was only 3 weeks away. It was and for me, just trying to get the information from my dad was like an uphill battle. He was still holding on to it so closely that there were times where I had to pry papers out of his hands. And I started my detective work waiting for him to leave the house before I went into his room and looked through his files to get information. I mean, that's how difficult it was to get started on finding information about like what was happening, who's the debt collectors, how many foreclosures, all this stuff. And then what ended up being kind of a blessing in disguise was that we lost one of the properties to foreclosure. Not the one that we were living in, luckily, but another property. And, most people would say that's very unfortunate because obviously you're not going to get the value of what the property is through foreclosure. But it ended up being a blessing because we had no money and we couldn't even pay off our attorneys. We couldn't pay off accountants, nothing. And so having the building go through foreclosure at least put a little bit of money into our bank so that we could hire attorneys and hire all the right people to help us. So in the end, I think when you look back at whatever is happening, it felt like my whole world was crashing. I literally one of the most stressful times of my life was trying to go through that because I felt immense pressure, especially because I'm an only child. That everything my family had worked for many generations, they came from China and worked, from my great grandmother all the way down to me, all the things that they had worked so hard for, and my grandparents had already passed at that time, was disappearing within moments. It felt like I was all the things, generations of hard work and coming to America and their dream was slipping away by us losing all these properties in the portfolio. So there was such an immense pressure on me to turn it around and help them save these properties. And I look back now and I would have done things very differently. I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, when everything went down, I actually had to Google like foreclosure because I didn't even know what a foreclosure was and what the process is. I looked up some YouTubes. I'm like, what does it even mean to like get in foreclosure? And so I really started from the ground zero with my education, but I think I am living proof that, you don't have to know everything to make a difference. And Google, YouTube, there's so much information out there. Like we live in a great age where the information is at your fingertips. So that served me well, is just being able to look up things and do my own research and learn as we went. And every time something new would happen, like what's a conservatorship? What does it mean to have the bank take over your property? Like I didn't know any of those things, and Google was amazing for that. And then including like the foreclosure, us losing one property to foreclosure was really a blessing in disguise.
Okay. Wow. That's, I can't even imagine. It's kind of funny when you mention your story. I was kind of just thinking about myself because I scaled rapidly in the past 8 months, but the downside of scaling rapidly, there's downsides too. And I'm pretty like transparent about it. When you scale too fast, you fall into something called asset rich, cash poor, right? And by you having to lose one property, you increase your cash. So that kind of helped you sustain your other properties. So sometimes it's kind of like taking a step back before you can take like 3 steps forward. You have to kind of lay that foundation with that. So I'm kind of going through that right now, where actually in the process of trying to sell my mobile home park for that reason, where I want to increase my cash position, stabilize my apartment units. And at that point, I can then leap forward and buy more if I want to. So, and I kind of love that point too. And it's kind of funny because when I interview people, success leaves clues. And basically every successful real estate investor goes to a point where I call it the valley of despair, where you feel like everything is ending, your world's falling apart. I can't even imagine how much pressure it is to like lose multiple generations worth of wealth. I guess I was fortunate where I didn't really have much to lose for me, but just that pressure. But the key message I got out of it was everything is figure outable, in simple terms. Like you can figure it out as long as you can problem solve one step at a time. You'll make mistakes, you learn from mistakes, and somehow you get through it. And that's exactly what you did well, and that's probably why you're successful today. So huge kudos for that. Not many 22-year-olds go through that type of stuff and are hit with that type of responsibility. Most 22 are they're just drinking and partying, right? Because we can finally go to the club or something. legally go to the club.
Yes.
So wow, that's I've never heard a story like that. So I didn't expect it to be that crazy. Wow. Uh, but
Yeah.
yeah. Anyways, kind of fast forward that uh, portfolio till today. So does your
Mhm.
family? Do you still currently own that portfolio, or what does it look like today for your family?
So I still have a portfolio manager that manages my family side. So actually, beyond just like regular check-ins with them to make sure things are, staying managed. And sometimes they'll ask me for big decisions, like we needed to like earthquake retrofit a property, which was going to be like 500,000. So I had kind of a say in how that was going to be run. But beyond, really big financial decisions, they don't involve me in the day to day, which is nice, and everything kind of just operates on its own. But for me personally, that's where I started my journey into past. I call it passion driven investing. Or like impact driven investing. So for me, I think because like I had kind of the confidence that I could succeed in my career, and I already had a pretty good job, like working in tech, and that baseline. So I wasn't starting with like just straight out of college with no funds, right? So because I had kind of that confidence of like, oh, I can always fall back on this if the real estate thing doesn't work, I just go back to tech. Um, because I started with that mindset, I was like, okay, what do I need to do in order to create a life of passion and do the things that I really would love to do? And for me, that was in the mental health space and giving back there. So I was very intentional about creating, like even with our flipping business, or when we started rentals and Airbnb, the overarching message of what we do is that it is impact driven. Like we give back to charity. We really believe in helping people with mental health challenges. And from that standpoint, I've never, I guess, shied away from money. Like it wasn't a feeling of guilt, because I always knew that no matter like what I do and how much wealth I create, I'm going to be able to help more people and give back. So that really served us well in just like, the way that we structured the business and the messaging, because people really resonate like, wow, you're doing something different than most investors, where nothing wrong with it. I totally see why a lot of investors are focused on creating wealth for themselves. But I think just, knowing that like I could always fall back on like my tech career and sort of the capital that I've built, with my specialty knowledge there, gave me so much more confidence just to take like really big risks and massive action in the real estate space, and just be like, hey, we're gonna like do this big thing and move forward, start investing in real estate and rentals, flipping properties, because I wanted to fulfill this dream of ultimately living, lifestyle freedom. And for me, lifestyle freedom meant I can do whatever I want with my time. And that has evolved actually, where in the beginning I was like, oh, I would love to just volunteer all day. Let me just like have no paycheck. I'll just take the passive income, get a paycheck from that, and then I can like volunteer with all these organizations and help people and be boots on the ground. That's evolved because I realized like I actually love business. And I love, I don't think I could do too many activities where I don't trade my time for money. And just realizing that I can make such a bigger impact when I am, using my skill sets to create wealth. Over time, I kind of just combined all the things that I love doing. Like I really loved hosting our Airbnb guests. I love the design aspect. I love travel, going to retreats. And I arrived at creating a wellness retreat focused on mental health. And then fast forward, kind of created a vision of us moving to Hawaii and building a wellness retreat out here. And have you ever heard of the book Vivid Vision by Cameron Herold?
Yep, read it recently actually.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So you're right on track. So I read that book and it said, create a vivid vision, a 3-year vision. And I was like, sure, I'll do it, whatever. I'll just follow this thing. And I wrote out the vision and in the book it says like share with everybody publish it, put it on your website, share it with your friends, share it with your coworkers. I honestly didn't do that. I wasn't brave enough to share my vision. I was a little afraid. And I thought, people would think I'm crazy. So I was like, I'm just going to keep it with myself and maybe share bits and pieces in passing. And I kind of would just tell people like, I have a dream of like maybe like opening a wellness retreat someday. And this is what I want to do and focus on mental health and blah, blah, blah. And people were really supportive of it. So, fast forward almost to the like 3 years from the day that I wrote the vision, pretty much I would say like 80% of it had come true. In terms of like how much wealth we had, the passive income number, us moving to Hawaii happened in 3 years. Like we were on track to like finding the retreat. So all these things happened because I wrote that vision. And even though I didn't like share it much, it still came true. So I'm such a believer in manifestation and just creating this super vivid vision. I guess just sharing bits and pieces of it. But I think if you really want to maximize, like put it out in the world, because what I found is the more people I shared it with, the more people were helping us along that journey and sharing with other people like, oh, I have a friend, she's looking to move to Hawaii, she wants to buy this property, and kind of like referring me and helping further me along and scale on my journey.
Yeah. Wow. A lot to unpack there, but I think kind of something that I thought that was really genius that you did. I kind of call the term asymmetrical bet. So basically, as you mentioned, your worst case scenario was your tech job, which pays well. For people don't know, for the most part, I'm from the Bay Area as well. I relocated to Southern California, but tech jobs pay well, and I'm in the same situation. I'm a pharmacist. My worst case is I'm a pharmacy director at a hospital, and I'm one of the highest paid pharmacists, relatively speaking, because I'm the director. That's my worst case scenario. Best case scenario, if you pursue something, whether it's real estate, business, combination of all the above, passion driven, your upside is way higher, right? Because your job, as you're kind of stagnant, especially healthcare. It's like your salary is like a flat line. Like I made the same as I made 10 years ago, but 10 years ago, gas wasn't, $6. And houses were half the cost as they are today, especially in the Bay Area. So you basically took a asymmetrical bet where I'm going to try it. If I fail, my worst case is I'm a tech worker, just like everyone else our age, right? That's your typical worker. But if you succeed, then you have the potential to get the life that you want. So, really love that concept. I've been thinking about a lot more, like, especially when analyzing deals, you got to look at the upside, but also what's the downside. And like my mobile home park, for example, my downside was I would break even worst case and wasted all this time and learned along the way. Upside is like, could be a golden goose where it can just help me leave the rat race. So I took that bet and, it's not too bad if you kind of measure it out. And then another thing, you kind of touched on it, vivid vision. So, for me, I kind of read that book recently. Obviously, I'm a skeptical person by nature. If you meet any pharmacists, we're skeptical by nature. And I was very skeptical of like manifestation of the big vision. But I started doing it recently. And I will say that, when you're trying to build a real estate portfolio, if you're trying to build wealth, if you're trying to build a business, it's very challenging. You're going through lots of challenge on a daily basis, and you're getting beaten up every single day. So by doing the vivid vision and just like, positive affirmations, visualizing your success, being it very clear, visualize your success as clearly as possible. I started doing that, and I noticed like my energy, my mood would change by me doing that. And I'm super skeptical, right? Like I'm the most skeptical person. And just by me doing that, it definitely changed my mindset. And when you're less stressed, you're better able to make better decisions. And you're able to see opportunities that present themselves to you. Right? Like that's how the world brings it back to you. If you're too stressed in your mind, you can't think creatively. You can't think outside of yourself. You're just so focused
Mhm.
on doing this, right? Whatever's in front of you. And I fell into that trap, right? So that's why I kind of love to talk about mental health as well, because I'm a pharmacist, right? We prescribe a lot of Prozac and all those antidepressants. 1 in 3 Americans have some type of mental health disorder. 1 in 3 millennials are on like Celexa 20 milligrams. It's crazy. You'll be surprised how many people are on antidepressants and they're just not, sharing about it. And you kind of mentioned it earlier where, especially in the Asian American community, it's not really talked about. It's very frowned upon. And it's just kind of like admitting that you're not good enough if you admit to any disorders. That's why there's a lot of Asian Americans are hoarding because they have some sort of OCD and they're untreated. They have some sort of depression. They have some sort of anxiety,
Yeah.
right? It's stressful to have to leave your country, flee a country, and then come here and start from scratch, right? Like that can take the best of you. So, really like how, you're kind of pivoting, your business, your real estate into like a wellness center. And, and there's phases too, or even me, like I went through a pretty dark period. I'd probably say the past like 4 months of just stress and anxiety and getting beaten up. So even like the best of us, right? I'm in healthcare. I know all about all this stuff. And even I
Mhm.
get beaten up, right? And
Yeah.
people, it's hard. So, and sometimes you feel alone, right? Like it's not very relatable to say, hey, I own like 90 units of real estate. People are like, boo hoo. So, so sad that you have so much wealth, right? So, it's really nice that, you're doing that. And what I kind of will say is there's kind of a concept where you cannot help others unless your cup is full. Like if you're on an airline and, there's a lack of oxygen, what do they always say? Give yourself the mask first before you give the mask to others. So I think you were able to kind of fill your own cup first, take care of yourself, your needs, and that allowed you to pursue your true purpose of helping others and giving back. So, um, and then kind of my question after that huge rant is what's kind of your plan with the wellness retreats? Like, what's kind of your goal with that?
Yeah, I love how you said, even though I'm in the healthcare industry and I, work with people that have these disorders and these illnesses and you see it day in, day out and you know how to take care of yourself, and yet you lack the time sometimes to focus on yourself.
Mhm.
Um, that's what I'm trying to address actually with my retreat is I recognize like people work really, really hard and they get burned out. And a lot of times you're not recognizing when you're in it. And I myself have been there. But I think because I have a worldview of mental health, I didn't share this earlier, but I now know that my dad was faced with caregiver PTSD.
Yeah.
And that's why he just crumbled and was like unable to even pick up the phone, open mail. He was depressed, was in bed a lot with the lights out for days on end because of the stress of taking care of our finances and my mom and myself and everybody else. He forgot to put himself first. So just seeing what can happen to people's lives, lives that you've spent maybe a lifetime building, multiple generations building, and all of that can disappear because one person has a severe illness. To me, it was very eye-opening, and I realized like how many other people need support and help and to focus on themselves to heal themselves. And you're absolutely right. It's you have to fill your cup first. And that's the approach that I've taken in wealth creation as well, is yes, wealth building is important, but without you taking care of yourself, your spirituality, your health, relationships, all those other things, none of the wealth matters.
Yeah.
Who cares, right? You can't be even billionaires. I have my mentors are in billionaire circles, and they're like, oh, a lot of these billionaires, it's like on the edge, living on the edge. They some of them are suicidal. Some of them are their everything is falling apart. The only thing they have is their wealth. And so it's like you look at them and you think they're on top of the world. They're some of the most successful people on earth, and yet their lives aren't in order. So like, what's the point? What's the point of you even putting all that effort if you can't enjoy it? And so that's kind of the standpoint that I take when I'm building my wellness retreat, is like, you need to take that time for you. Come here on like that focused time to heal and recognize like whatever you're holding on to, the limiting beliefs, the baggage, the trauma, let's address that. Let's take care of that. Let's heal that. And let's put that behind you. Now, what kind of life do you want to create? And I'm going to help people create a life of more purpose, a life of health and wealth and success. And what that means is it's going to be a ripple effect, is when people heal. So have you ever heard of the saying, hurt people hurt people?
Yes.
So hurt people, right? But also healed people heal people.
Yeah.
And so I'm really, taking that standpoint of like, of creating like a ripple effect of healing, and I call it contagious healing, which is where I'm helping people that maybe are lacking in purpose, maybe have recognized that they're burnout. You said 1 in 3 millennials are on antidepressant medication, right? I want to address that. I want to do it in a way where you're not reliant on medication to address these things in your life. I strongly believe there's a different way. And so, having people come away from their work, just be disconnected, come to a beautiful space. My retreat is located on 2.25 acres of agricultural land in Hawaii. With the oceans, you can see the ocean from our property. It's surrounded by trees, completely secluded. So it's just a place for people to really focus on themselves and their healing, and create a life of purpose, and define that. And then I want to give them like an actionable framework so that they can take the steps in order to have a life of balance and have it all. Because once you fill your cup, you are unstoppable.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you kind of shared that, because for those who don't know, schizophrenia is a tough disease to treat. Like, even with medications, like in my hospital I work at, we have a psychiatric ward, and typically they're filled with schizophrenics, and it's really, really challenging disease to treat. They're very volatile, so as you mentioned, it does put a lot of strain on the partner, like, so your dad in this case, and then it creates a lot of generational trauma for even, like, if you're raised by someone with schizophrenia. Like, I've seen friends, unfortunately, where they're raised by a mom that had schizophrenia, and it definitely passes down. It's generational trauma. That's how it happens. So as you mentioned, hurt people. And as I kind of got older and a little more mature, I kind of realized that all these angry people, when they yell at you or just really rude, especially in the hospital, it's just like, they're hurting and they just don't have a way to express it. And you just happen to be there. But then once you kind of learn that, oh, these people are just hurting in a way, they might be broken in a way, or never had an opportunity to self-reflect on it in a way. So that's just their outlet. So don't take it personally, and try to give them that help. So, love that you mentioned that. And it's true, right? And I think kind of what helped me personally is, obviously social media, or, the digital age is a blessing and a curse, right? Blessing in the sense of you can literally build a side income business while working full time, like what I'm doing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of free information out there, but the downside is there's a lot of distractions. Your brain is always on, right? Like, if you wait in the elevator for 10 seconds, what's everyone doing? They're pulling their phone out and they're looking at it. We're like addicted to our phones. So what I really learned that helped me was just like detaching from your phone a little bit. For me, I mute all notifications on my phone. And so you don't feel like you're at mercy of your phone. Like, you always hear a little ding sound, or you see a little red flash. Oh, I got a new notification, a new email. Someone liked my post, and you're just like constantly on and wired. And honestly, our brains aren't smart enough. We have very caveman-like brains. We're not supposed to have that much stimulation constantly. So it's nice that, where you're at, there's a lot of land. It's a little bit quieter in Hawaii, obviously, compared to Los Angeles, where I'm at. So it's definitely nice that you're doing that. And I will say from personal experience, like, just having that solitude. So start your morning slow. Don't start your morning in a panic, right? That's where people fail. You woke up late, scrambling to work. Everything is falling behind. So that's what I kind of done personally. And I drive in silence. I have an hour commute. I'll drive in complete silence sometimes. And most people freak out by that, but I'm like, you'll see your brain racing, and after about 20 minutes, it's just stillness. And that's when you get your best ideas, to be honest, and solving issues. So it's just kind of been, my personal experience. So no, that's amazing what you're doing, because it definitely is an issue. I see the worst of it, unfortunately, being in the hospital end. But what you're doing, like you said, antidepressants are supposed to just be a temporary. It's not supposed to be the permanent solution. And the solution is fixing your lifestyle and finding a way to find purpose or give back or whatever that is. So dude, definitely love what you're doing. That's impressive, actually. Coming from someone in a healthcare background for the past 10 years. We're just so trained in the hospital, medicate and go home, right? Unfortunately. So, okay, let's fast forward till today. So, what does kind of your real estate portfolio look like for yourself?
So right now we have, I think I literally just reached 100 units. Actually, it's kind of funny. I reached 100 units right before I was asked to speak on the panel. So it's kind of like funny timing. I actually didn't include the syndications that I'm part of. I just felt like it was kind of a cop out. So all of my properties are either individually owned between my husband and I, or we have partners on them. There's a small group of partners to own multifamily properties. We started out with, I think it was like a 3-unit in Concord back when we were in the East Bay area. And I wanted to be hands-on. I wanted to help, renovate the property and fix the garden. And I was scrubbing floors and preparing for my renters. And I was very, very involved in the rental process and who the renters were and all the details. And I would send them gifts Christmas and give them little notes. And, I was just trying to be a good landlord and kind of do things differently in the way that I hadn't seen other landlords operate their rentals. And then I realized as I continued my career or my real estate journey and my investment journey is that you can't be too close to your properties because you start to have a very strong emotional attachment to them. And there was no ROI in me going to these properties and scrubbing floors. And, my tenants weren't paying any more rent because I was the one scrubbing their floor. So my mindset really had to shift from being kind of that technician, like the manager, and really into an entrepreneurial role of like, where are my skill sets? My skill sets are in networking, in business, in finding deals, in assessing, the ROI on these investments. What's the value add? Like, these are the things where I can use, my brain, my skills to do that other people can't. And I can leverage other people's skill sets like a cleaner, a handyman, all those things to do those tasks for us. And I'm better, my hourly rate and my time is better spent on focusing on the business. So it took a while for me to shift. A big game changer was reading the E-Myth for the Real Estate Investor. That was a great book for me to think of my operation as an entrepreneur instead of, as somebody that's trading their time for money, kind of like a laborer. And also 4-hour work week was like a game changer for me, and just like how, I had to do a lot of mindset shifts about, what it meant to be an entrepreneur and what are you trading, right? Is it time? Is it money? What kind of assets? What kind of skill sets do you bring to the table? So being more intentional about that, kind of began to scale and then got turnkey properties at first because I was like, I don't have time right now. I'm still working with my career, wanting to further that. I just knew I wanted to start building passive income, but I had no time to like figure out how to find deals or anything. But a portfolio of out-of-state properties. They're single-family homes in Jacksonville, Florida, and I think we just got really, really lucky on those. Most turnkey properties are not home runs, but I think because we just bought in Jacksonville before Jacksonville blew up, we were able to refi in 2 years and get all our down payment back. So the 25% that we put down, we got everything back in 2 years because they had massive appreciation in that area. And you know what that meant when we got all our money back, and these were turnkey, so they were new builds and they had no, like, very low capex, very low expenses, and then they were even giving out 2 to 3 year leases on these properties, so it was all like just a home run kind of deal there. That once we got our money back, we realized, like, wow, it's infinite returns. When you get all the money back that you put in, sky's the limit. Every single dollar you make after that is infinite. So that was really cool, seeing like the possibility of real estate and what could happen if you get lucky. But I would call that getting lucky. I wouldn't say there was any skill set involved. We just were in the right time, right place. And then at the same time, we had a lot of duds and lemons, and we had flips where we lost like 40K, and some, you know, we have one houseboat in Brentwood that's been just like a nightmare. Terrible tenants. They pay late every month. They have all kinds of complaints. The marina fees just keep climbing, and there's no rent control on marina fees. So I think it increased $1,200 a month over a span of 2 years. And now we're, you know, just at the mercy of this marina unless we want to move our houseboat. So there's been many things along the way that, you know, as we kind of just scaled and started to build our portfolio, that we learned, like, wow, one property with one bad set of tenants could be the biggest headache, whereas I have 12 properties in Kansas City and they're all running smoothly. I've got the 12 houses in Jacksonville, Florida, and they're all running smoothly. And, you know, good property managers make all the difference. If you can rely on them to run them for you, they shouldn't be calling you all the time. And I think that's the ultimate, like, passive income investing, is when you find someone to take care of your assets for you. You don't have to be self-managing. And you're not your own property manager, then you can rest easy knowing, like, that asset is still producing when you're sleeping. So that's kind of the way that I guess changed my mindset over time, is like, okay, instead of me being that person that boots on the ground and like deal finding and really like doing all the analysis, let me network. Because I think that's where my skill set is in networking and building connections and relationships and kind of just sharing the stories. And so it was my kind of advice that I give to a lot of investors is, like, know where your skill sets are. What are your assets? What do you bring to the table? Are you really amazing at numbers? Because I'm not that amazing at numbers. I can do numbers, but I don't like spreadsheets. I can't be in them all day. So for me, that would just be grueling to sit in, you know, in front of the computer and like analyze deals all day. I prefer to network and find the people that have the good deals that can bring it to me, and then we can partner together and create I guess a symbiotic relationship together. So that's really where I kind of came to the table and said, like, I like to network. I like, you know, someone to find me deals, bring them to us. We'll assess if they're good deals, and then we can partner on them. And that's kind of how I've grown my portfolio over time, is like, instead of going out there to find deals and trading kind of that time equity for a property, instead, you know, finding the people that got the deals and had the network, utilizing their network, and then going in on properties with them.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing. So kind of what you described was you increase your leverage every time. So in the beginning, you know, you either have time or money. What's more valuable? In the beginning, money is usually more valuable, so you either give up your time. So that's like
Mm.
when you get your triplex, I was the same way. My first property, I was cleaning it myself every weekend. I was happy to do it because it was like the first house that I owned. And you're really excited, right? Like, oh, this is my property. I own it. So I'm going to take care of it, right? I had that mindset. You definitely had it with your triplex. But, after a while, it doesn't become fun anymore. And you want to do other things. And that's when you get the leverage out. That's when you start getting a cleaner. That's when you start getting handyman. Like I tried to change a toilet one time. It took me 8 hours. I said, you know what? I'm better off just working my pharmacist job, and I could just pay a plumber to do that, and I didn't even enjoy it. Right after 8 hours, and I still did it wrong. Glad you said that. And then next, you jumped into, when did you invest in Jacksonville? What time window was that? What year?
It was right before the pandemic.
Okay,
So I don't know, like
2020.
2018, 2019. Yeah, 2019
Okay.
maybe.
So, I mean, yeah, you did kind of mention that, you got lucky. Definitely in retrospect, yeah, it was a good time, right? Because, real estate skyrocketed specifically at the start of COVID and, up until recently, to be honest. And, Jacksonville was a pretty hot market as well. So the fact that you
Mhm.
had a 12-unit portfolio that was, turnkey, you mentioned they were like new construction or close to new construction.
Yeah.
So because of that, I mean, what's kind of smart about that, and I started off in turnkey new construction as well, because when you're working full time, you don't want to spend as much effort renovating a project per se. You just want to know, okay, I'm buying it for this much. This is how much I rent it out for. These are my expenses. This is my cash flow.
Yeah.
Very easy, right? Obviously, single families, the value is based on the sales comps. So it's dependent on the market. So, you bought it a good time and it went up in 2 years. You did a cash out refinance, pull all your money out. That's a perfect burr. And it just was you just had time in the market. You said you were lucky, but people have been saying since 2015, oh, it's gonna pop, real estate's gonna pop, real estate's gonna pop, right? So you still took the risk, you still took the initiative and jumped in, and it did well for you. So I know people who were talking about real estate when I did, never took action, and they still own zero real estate versus like people like me, I scaled to 90, you scaled to like 100. So just by taking that action and taking that risk, that's how you built. And then now at this point, you basically get the point, you get more leverage where you want to find people where, okay, I want to, people bring me the deal, you leverage them, and then you can create a symbiotic relationship. And that's how you scaled even more. And I'll be honest, that's my personal stopping point right now. If I were to label one point for me is the partnership route. I do know that like, if you want to go to the next level, you do have to partner, definitely, because you run out of your capital eventually, you run out of your time eventually, and I hit both, to be honest, capital and time. But I'm trying to just kind of lay my foundation first before jumping forward for that. So yeah, I guess kind of through the story, did you have any like bad partnerships, and how did that kind of look like?
Yeah, yeah. So, of course, people like to talk about all the success that they have. I would say partnerships are not easy, and most of them don't end up in the way that you're expecting. And it's just, it's a learning lesson, because when you're embarking into something new, like this is the first time I've bought a 50plex. This is the first time I've bought an Airbnb. This is the first time I've bought a commercial property. Whatever it is, as you're growing as an investor, you're going to keep running into new projects, new deals. And when you go into it not knowing what to expect, you can do as much due diligence as possible. You can even vet the partner, you can vet their characteristics, their skill sets, whatever it is. You can lay out the roles and responsibilities, but the reality is like you just don't know what you don't know. And so once you're in it and you're operating, then it's a matter of, okay, how all these things are popping up. How do we assess this and divvy up the work? And I think that's where a lot of partnerships don't go well, because there isn't as much willingness beyond the roles and responsibilities for someone to be like, oh, that's on me, I'll take it. And then also life gets in the way. Is like, oh, people have babies, people, whatever the thing is, that they get a new career, they start a new project, and that's time consuming. And then now they don't have as much time on the partnership. So I would say that, looking back, personality is very important. I use the DISC assessment, DISC, to assess, what people come to the table with in terms of their personality. And I really try to build partnerships where everybody has their own letter. So like I am a heavy I with a low D, then that means that I need to find an S and a C to complement my skill sets. So just identifying like where is this person coming from? What kind of skills do they bring to the table? Because I think a lot of people begin partnerships with friendships,
Yeah.
and that's actually not a great way to form a partnership, because a lot of times your friends are people that are like you.
Yes.
And when they're like you, it means that they probably have the same kind of DISC assessment as you. So you really need to find the exact opposite of who you are, and partner with them. And then, for me, when I failed at partnerships, it was because I didn't assess how they deal with problems. And that was, big learning. And I continue to learn. We continue to, deal with this with even my new partnerships now. It's like, what kind of hardships have they gone through, and how did they deal with them? Did they roll up their sleeves, and just go at it, or did they have avoidance or procrastination? How do people handle pressure and, tough situations? And I think that that's a really defining way of figuring out who is a good partner. Is also like, do they hold grudges, or do they let go? Are they stressed out when there's a leak, when there's this drama, when someone serves you papers? How do you deal with it when someone's trying to sue you? Like those kind of things is usually a good determining factor of like how they're going to be as a partner.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because basically how you do anything is how you do everything, right?
Mhm.
So, for me, I work in a hospital, and, for me, I'm under high pressure every day. It's life and death, literally, for me, in making decisions, right? Like someone's bleeding to death in the emergency room. I got to make a quick decision on which drug to give. So to
Mm,
me, because I'm dealing with life and death situations, when it comes to real estate, I just think, oh, like this isn't that terrible. Okay, a roof is like busted. Okay, just spend 20K to fix it. And it's just like very casual, because I'm used to like a level 9 problem, and maybe a roof for me might be like a level 2 problem in
yeah.
comparison. Right. So that's what you're kind of mentioning. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because like a lot of people, believe it or not, they're not action oriented, even people in real estate. Because, for me, I'm so action oriented, like to a fault almost, where I would take too fast of an action. Because to me, you assess the situation, you take action, and if it doesn't work, you pivot. What's the option A, B, C, D, E, right? If it doesn't work, pivot, you learn from it, and hopefully the next time it happens, you do it better, right? That's kind of the core of that. But some people, they're like, oh, I don't know, I'm doubting, I need to do this, I'm stressed out over my day job, I need to procrastinate. And it can get frustrating, right? Like if, let's say you're action oriented and then the other person likes to procrastinate. So that's what honestly made me shy away from partnerships a little bit, because I just want to make the decision and like not have to fight with somebody and make it more complicated and stressful than it needs to be. But on the flip side, as you mentioned, if you find someone that compliments you, 1+1 will be 3, not 2. If you get someone exactly like you and you both hate spreadsheets, like, okay, that's great, but you can just both hate spreadsheets together. So yeah, it's kind of interesting, like how that goes. And, to be honest, partnerships, it's hard to get out than a marriage. Marriage, you can get divorced way easier than you get out of a partnership. And what you need to realize too is you and your partner may have goals that align today, but in 5-10 years, the goals may change.
Yeah.
And situations change, right? Maybe they go through divorce, maybe they go through disability, maybe they go through death. I see it every day. And all of a sudden, your partner's situation may change. So, that's always what you have to consider when partnering. And that's the risk you take. But, the upside is if you find a great partner, that's how you scale massively. But, you have to, it's kind of like dating, right? You have to go through, a couple partners before you find the one. But like you said, there's a lot of things in real estate, and I'm sure like literally whatever you underwrite when you buy an apartment complex, the moment you take over the property, throw it out the window. because, I do C-class value at apartment complexes. I underwrite 10% cash and cash flow day one. I take over the apartment complex. I have 5 people stop paying me and I evict them. There goes my 10% cash and cash return, right? It's probably like negative or breaking even, but now I'm going to renovate their units and raise it to market rent, right? So, just expect that, or take over apartment complex. Everyone makes a service request now because the prior landlord didn't want to fix anything. So now you're fixing AC units in every unit, especially now, right? Yeah. And each AC unit's like $3,000 times 10 units, right? And or you have a bed bug infestation and you have to fumigate all your units, not just one, all the units. Because if you fumigate one unit, the bed bug goes to the next unit, and then the next unit, and now you're paying $500 per unit to fumigate it. So, like you will get hit with haymakers in real estate, but as long as you can think long term, and know that long term this will do well, and have that long-term outlook, then you'll be successful in real estate. That's where people fail. And that's what I learned too. Like if you were to tell me 3 years ago, hey, Steven, you're going to own 90 units, I'd be like, oh, I could probably give my boss a middle finger and not have to work. Right. But I'm still working because I'm stabilizing the apartments. Right. But once they're stabilized at that point, you could step away and pursue your true purpose and passion, whatever that is. Mine is teaching and education and just learning and sharing what I learned. Mm-hmm. If I were to kind of sum it, and if you think about it, healthcare is exactly that too, right? Like I teach patients and I teach pharmacy students and residents, so it's just kind of that mindset. So I guess kind of anything you kind of want to share that kind of helped lead to your success. I guess what's kind of one trait that you had that led to your success?
I would say it's probably two-part. It's not having parents available to take care of me from a young age meant that I was very independent and entrepreneurial. I've been supporting myself ever since I was 15.
Wow.
And because my family was in financial hardship. They couldn't give me money to spend on things. So I had to find my own money. And I think because of that, I went through a slew. I think I had about 20 jobs before I turned 18.
Wow.
Just, I was like a dog walker, and I worked in a sushi restaurant, and I worked at a toy factory and all kinds of things. And I think because of that, I've always just been, very entrepreneurial and willing to do whatever it takes. And I think that has served me well, especially in real estate and in my career. So that's one thing. It's just like do whatever you need to do to get to where you want to go. And I think a lot of people are not as flexible. It's like, I don't want to scrub that floor. I'm here. I'm not gonna like get dirty and like do this and that, whatever it is. There are times where I still have to do that. I sometimes have to step in and get dirty with the investments, and it just got to do what it takes. Like people don't show up to work. So that's one thing. And then I would say the other thing is the stress level. I think you touched on that, Stephen. Working in a hospital and having to deal with, life and death and extreme situations daily has increased your capacity for stress, because like none of this is worth it. Like people die, right? It's like, why push yourself to the edge? It's not worth it to even go through that amount of stress and put your body through so much strain. And I think because of all the things that happened to me, my chaotic upbringing, you said yourself, schizophrenia is not an easy illness, and dealing with a lot of chaos, a lot of fear and unpredictability from a young age for me, and kind of learning how to navigate that chaos and just rising above it and staying calm and not letting that really affect my mindset and my stress level. Because, going through all that with my family and the financial hardship, same thing. It's like, oh, this leak, this person suing me, that's a 2. I've been at 10s before. This is nowhere close to a 10. So just kind of taking that mindset with anything that comes our way, it's like, well, yes, it sucks. It's not great, but there's so many worse things out there. There's human trafficking and
Yeah.
oppression and wars and starvation. So like it just in comparison, the problems that we face, they're all good problems to have. And we just take it with a grain of salt and we handle it, but it really matters like how you handle that stress, whether you hold on to it and really ruminate, or you just say, hey, well, it happened, what do we got to do, how do we fix it?
Great. Yeah. I mean, kind of what I heard was just kind of resilience, right? From your story and your journey. Like, people kind of see that, oh, you scaled to 100 units recently, the past, 6-7 years, but you've been basically building your character, since you're like 15 or maybe even earlier. So, people don't see that. They're just kind of seeing your highlight reel. And same with me, you're seeing my highlight reel as well. But just know that like success comes in seasons, right? There's a season where you're just working, odd jobs. There's a season where you're pursuing your own tech career. There's a season where, you're helping pick up the scraps of your family, real estate portfolio. There's a season now where, you built your own real estate portfolio and now you're enjoying it and you're now giving back with your wellness. So just know that like there's a certain season and, everyone's in different seasons at different times. But just if you know that it's just temporary and eventually you'll get through it, then yeah, at the end of the day, I see people get hit by cars every day. And they could be worth billions of dollars and they would give up all that billions just to be able to walk again. So the fact that like we can even walk is like a blessing, but you can't take it for granted. Think about it. And, for me, I'm humbled by it every day because I see it every day, literally multiple times a day, right? I see the worst of the worst, unfortunately, but it just kind of keeps you humble and grounded that like, hey, it's going to be hard, but just enjoy the journey. And I think that's what kind of killed me with the vivid vision. I kind of forgot to mention my goal was like, 20K a month by 35. I'm not going to hit it, or I still may. But I was kind of like stressing myself out with it because I just thought, well, it wasn't making me enjoy the journey and being present. That's what I thought the downfall was, because I was always thinking, even if you're at 10K a month, you're thinking, oh, I'm 10K behind my goal, instead of thinking, oh, wait, compared to like 5 years ago, I went significantly to 10K. So you're always just like chasing this like goalpost. And then it just kind of didn't feel fulfilling. It actually made me a little more anxious. So once I kind of just removed that off of me, I actually started enjoying it a bit more better. So that was just kind of something that I fell into a bit. I'm not sure if others fall into that, but that's just one trap I definitely fell into. So now I don't do like 3, 5, 10-year goals because I don't know how that's going to pan out. I actually just do like 6-month goals. Like this 6-month segment, this is what I want to do. And then I'll reevaluate in the next 6 months and see if I want to continue it or pivot to something else. So that's what I personally did. And yeah, I just kind of felt like I was putting too much pressure on myself when, I wasn't really enjoying the process either. So that's why I kind of removed that constraint off of me. But I have seen success with like, obviously laying a vision, but that's just a trap that high achievers fall into. Because I basically achieved everything I wanted. And, once you kind of hit the top, it's kind of underwhelming sometimes. Like, oh, I thought it was gonna be better than what it was, right? So that's at least my experience. Like, became a pharmacist. Oh, this is whatever. Became pharmacy director. Oh, it's not as great as I thought. Bought my first property. Okay, it's great. Then you scale to 90. Okay, I kind of feel the same, to be honest. So, been creating a lot of content, kind of my mindset shift recently after kind of obtaining, the certain level of success that I had. But anyways, Michelle, thank you so much for hopping on and sharing your journey. I definitely learned a lot. I did not expect your story to be that crazy, to be honest. Probably the craziest one I've heard. But, goes to show that if you went through all that and you became successful, I think anyone can do it as well. How can our viewers find you and get a hold of you?
Thanks, Steven. It's been an absolute honor to talk to you and learn about your story as well. And I love what you're doing and furthering with your passion for education, helping other people out, and just really talking about, beyond what went well in real estate, what didn't go well. Because I think that's really where the magic is identifying, like, okay, learn from us. We didn't do it the right way, so you don't have to make the same mistakes that we did. So really appreciate you having me on. For me, you can follow my personal Instagram account. I'm at miso, like miso soup, MISO .mind, MIND, so like mindset. I also have my website, lotusrisingretreats.com. You can also follow us on Instagram at Lotus Rising Retreats. That's the name of our wellness retreat located in Oahu, Hawaii. Our very first retreats in January. We're booked out for January and February. We are booking for the following month. So if any of your listeners are interested in either renting out our incredible space, we're also renting it as for rental. And we're hosting mental health retreats and wellness retreats. Opening start in March. If people are interested in signing up, check us out on Instagram or at our website.
Cool, Michelle. And I'll definitely, drop a link to all that down below in the comments, so people can reach out. And definitely, if I come, I'll make sure to bring the Prozac with me to distribute to the whole entire group. I'm just kidding. All right, Michelle. Thank you so much. I think we touched the tip of the iceberg. But definitely, I think we'll find a lot of value from your story. So thank you once again.
Thanks, Stephen. Appreciate it.
Thank you.